Over and look at the steps and some of the things that you really need to focus on when you're installing server-based printing. So the lab in chapter 9 is going to be installing a network capable printer, and really is all about server-based printing. How do we install printers on servers, connect clients to the servers, and print? We're not going to be doing printing in a business like we do at home, so we've got to get comfortable with this. You're going to need two PCs. One is going to be, think of it as your tech station. So one of the PCs is just going to be your station to connect to and do the work. You're going to remote into a server. You're going to go into the web interface on a printer. So you need a station to do that. That's going to be your workstation. And then we're going to have one more PC that's going to be like a client. It's where we're going to test the printing just like Joe, Pete, Henry would at their desk. Because networking is involved, make sure you take your link runner and test all your network connections, your cables, make sure you're pulling an IP address. It saves so much time if you do a little bit of testing instead of wasting hours trying to get something on the network working and find out that a switch port is dead. So help us out with that. Do a good job on that. You're going to be using a server called VWP B126 PL. This is a 2008 server. It's a 64-bit operating system, and you're going to use this as your server because you need a server to do this. You can remote into that server. You have rights to do that, and you can do most of what you do on that. I'm going to demonstrate it on a 2012 so you can look at a more advanced operating system, and we'll do some of the same things. So here's your classic example of a printer at home. Most of you are comfortable or have at least one or two times had some experience connecting via USB printers to a computer at home. And then the problem with that is it's localized to this computer. This computer has to be on. If it's on a network, then you have to be able to share that printer to the network so that other family members can use it. We'll also cover that. We want you to be able to troubleshoot, install this type of scenario of more home or small business where you simply have a printer directly connected via USB to a computer. That makes it more challenging. There are issues with that. This is great for home, but not good for a business. Here is a business environment. And here is where we're going to take professional operating systems, Server 2012, Server 2008 R2. We are going to install them on servers. We are going to install what's called the role for print services on the operating system. We are then going to use the same technology that you connect via a printer at home, but this time we're going to use TCP/IP, and we're going to connect directly to these printers. And then we're going to share them out to the network so that all of our users can just go straight to the server and access the printers they need. This is exactly what you do in class. So here's an example of our classroom. You can see I'm on server VWP-S04. And you can see that I have many printers available to students to print to. This is server-based printing. And notice some of them you may or may not have access to. So in order to do server-based printing, we must begin by first setting up the printer. One of the key things that we want to do is we want to make sure that all of our server-based printers have static IP addresses. We do not use DHCP on network-based printers because if they get shut off for any length of time, they may get another IP address, which we don't want, and now you've broken the system. The server can't talk to it now because it's looking for the other IP address. So one of the first things we do is go into our printers and establish a static IP. So in our lab, you can see the first thing we're going to do is set up the printer. So we're going to take our workstation PC, the PC that we're going to do the setting up the printer, the remote desktop into the server. We're going to use that workstation to begin, and the easiest way is to pop a network card into the back of your printer, fire it up, print out a network configuration report, and it will have the IP address that you need to then take your browser. And notice here I've just launched my browser and I've typed in the IP address that's on the report. So here's our HP 400 in the back that we use. And you can see I'm just going to go ahead and up on the menu is a little network menu, and you can punch that with your finger and it will give you the IP address and the information that you need to know about the present TCP/IP status of that printer. We may not leave it there. In fact, most cases we're going to change it. But I'm going to use the present IP address right now to get into the web interface on this printer. So I'm going to go back to my workstation, open up my browser, and type in the IP address of that printer. So here you can see it's 10.29.143.190. Now this happens to be a static IP address, but it generally will not. So we'll have to change it. So let's go take a look at how to do that. So here we go. I'm going to go to my workstation PC and I'm going to clean out my URL and simply type in the IP address 10.29.143.190. And that allows me into the web interface, the web interface of the printer. This is typical of almost all printers today. So I'm actually inside the 400 and I'm actually able to go in and make changes. So one thing I'm going to do is start with a network, and I am going to go in and set up a static IP on that printer. So you can see I've drilled down into the interface, the web interface, and notice it is set for manual. That's what we want, static. So they don't call it static, they call it manual. You manually enter the IP address, and you can see I put in the subnet mask, I put in the gateway. You have to do all of this manually. Normally printers are shipped with DHCP, so they simply boot up, pull an IP address, but we don't do that with server-based printing. In this case, I'm going to leave it just like it is because it's already statically configured, but the printer you deal with probably will not be. You'll have to make these changes. Make sure you check the network jack of your printer. Make sure that your link lights are on. You got activity on the back. Don't miss the obvious. So be sure if you're working on this lab, make sure your networking is working. Now our next step is to connect our printer to the server, or the server to the printer. So we've set up our printer using our workstation PC. It's properly set with a static IP. Now we're ready to go to the server and get the server configured, drivers brought down and set up so that we can configure this printer to the server. Remember, the server will print everything. It will receive the jobs from the clients. It will spool them and then send those jobs to the printer. We like this method because it allows control. The advantage of this model is that I can put security restrictions. I can do cost back charges to the clients who use printer services. So this model is almost used always in an enterprise and a business. We do not want our users printing directly to the printer. We want them to go to the server, be authorized, be validated, and then their job will then be sent to the printer. So before I get excited about logging onto the server and doing anything with the server, I'm still at my PC workstation. I need to get the drivers. I'm not going to take my server and browse to the internet with a browser. That's a huge security risk. I'm going to take my workstation and browse to HP site, Samsung site, Kerasi Amida site, get the drivers downloaded on my workstation, and then with remote desktop I'll take them to the server. That's a very safe way of getting drivers, so you're not taking your server and browsing the internet with it. So here I'm at the laser, the HP LaserJet Pro 400. I'm going to be using English as a language, and here's where I have to be very careful. We are going to be installing this printer on a server. So I need server drivers, not workstation drivers. Since this is going to be a 2012 product, we'll choose this one. Now on your lab, you're going to be using a 2008. I'm going to be using a 2012 so you can see both. Now notice when I go to this site, it's going to give me drivers, and it has a universal driver, which I may use. I'll explain some of the pros and cons to universal drivers. I have some firmware updates and utilities, but let's just go right now to the universal driver. So right now, as it stands, this particular printer only has a universal driver that will work with Server 2012. So we'll use that one. So this is a growing trend with printers, is they are developing what is known as universal printer drivers. This is good and bad. Notice that this particular driver supports all of these operating systems, and both 32-bit and 64. The nice thing about it is it just works. And it works on just about anything that's Microsoft Windows. The problem is some universal drivers do not give you all of the hardware features on your printer. So there's pros and cons to this, but in most cases this will at least get us printing until we can find the appropriate driver. After quite a bit of searching and moving around, I did find the page for the HP Universal Driver. It's for Windows 64. PLC is HP's driver language, and that's the one we're going to use. Now notice there's software, there's all kinds of USB drivers, so stay focused on what you're doing. We want the universal driver for a 64 and 32-bit operating system. We have a couple choices. We usually go for the one with the most up-to-date date, the greatest version. So this is Windows with PostScript. We don't want PostScript. We want PCL. And this looks like the 6.0 looks like the one we want. So we're going to go ahead and download that one. That works with Windows. It's a universal driver. And we're going to go ahead and download that. And you can see in my browser, I'm going to lift it up. You can see it's coming down. Now we generally don't want all the software that comes with, say the 400 comes with all kinds of funky software. We don't want that on the server. We just want the driver. All right. So we have downloaded the printer driver here. You can see it in my download folder. I have already also downloaded a Samsung. So we're going to take this one to the server and install it. And we'll find out that the installation process will probably automatically find a driver that works even without using this, but we'll do both. Over here is a Samsung driver that I downloaded and installed. And if you open it up, you can take a look. And here are the drivers for the Samsung. So if I was using Samsung, I could have extracted, used WinZip, extracted those files out, taken these files to the server, and installed a Samsung printer and many other type manufacturers. So this is what you should be looking for when we look for drivers. It shouldn't be a lot of files. It just should be the driver files. So let's go back to download, and I'm going to go back here. In this case, this exe is going to have everything we need. It's a universal driver, so we're going to simply take that with us as we remote desktop. So on our workstation, we're going to launch our remote desktop, and I'm going to back out of here and we'll end this session. And we're going to launch another one so you can see how I'm going to do it. So here's our remote desktop RDC. And I'm going to come down here and I'm going to take local resources. I'm going to take my C drive of my workstation, the station that I'm doing all this work on, to the server. This C drive on my PC right now is going with me to the server. I'm taking this local resource because it's got my driver. And we're going to go back to general and we're going to connect to the server. Say yes. Type in the magic password. And we're going to connect. So now once we're on the server, I'm going to look at, and so here is the C drive of the server. Here is the C drive that I'm presently on my workstation PC, and I've brought it to the server. So I can open it up. I can go into users and find my profile because I was logged on as 8526. Find my, so here I'm going into my downloads, and here is our driver. And I'm just going to bring it to the desktop of the server. And that's a safe way of bringing files to a server. We do not launch IE on a server and go to the internet. That's a huge security risk. So now I've got my driver here, and I'm going to go ahead and get started with setting up a printer. So I'm launching Server Manager. That's this icon down here. And I'm going to go up to Tools, and we're going to launch Printer Management. And that's the tool that we're going to use to connect to the printer. And so we're going to, this is the MMC for print management on the server. Right mouse click, we're going to add a printer. And we're going to connect with TCP/IP, so we're going to go next. And we're going to type in the IP address of our printer, 10.29.143.190. And that's the IP address. And notice it gives us, it did connect to it and it did recognize it, but we're just going to rename it so it's something simple, HP 400. And we're going to share this printer to the network. This is very important. We're connecting to the printer, but we want to share the printer so that John, Henry, George, Pete, and Julie can connect to the server and print to the printer. HP 400. And I could give a location. I could say it's on the 3rd floor. And that's always a good idea. CST Lab. I could give information about the printer. So when someone goes on the network to find it, they can understand what it is. This is an MFP. And it has a scanner and prints in black and white. So they're not thinking this is a color printer. They understand exactly what they're connecting to. And we're going to go next. And notice it's really 2012 server actually found the printer. So I really didn't have to use the universal driver. We'll do a printer test page. And go ahead and let that go. And so now we have an HP 400 connected to the server. So we have connected via TCP/IP the server to the printer. And we're doing this with remote desktop. I'm on my workstation. So I'm not even at the server or physically at the server. I've remoted into the server. So here I right mouse click. I can go into properties of the printer. And these are the things that are very important in server-based printing. Information like this, I can set up double-sided, all the information about the printer. Here's my sharing. It's going to be shared as HP 400. And let me show you how that looks. I'm going to go to Internet Explorer, and I'm going to show you, going // VWP-2012 PS, that's the name of this server. And we're just going to hit enter, and you can see it's shared as HP 400. So I'm sharing that name. I'm not sharing the printer per se, but the name of the printer to the network clients. So that's the name I'm going to give it. And I've got ports, and I'm using a particular port. And that is a TCP port that I'm using. And I can control printing. I can say it's only available from some time to some time. I can give a priority to that printer. I can control spooling of jobs. They can be printed. They can start printing after all the file is spooled or print immediately. You can kind of drive around and see the options. And then I can secure it. I can decide who can print to it. Everyone is kind of dangerous. So here's where you can add various users and groups that will allow you to. Now, before we go any further, let's go back. Remember, we are still on step 2. We're just setting up the printer, the server, to print to the printer. All of what we've done has been step 2. So now we've shared the printer to the network. Now we're going to get ready to do the next part, which is allow clients to connect to the server and print. Back to security, we have to choose who has rights to the printer. Are we going to allow everyone to print? Yes or no? Manage the printer, manage documents, things of that nature. So you want to look at security. That's one of the reasons why the printer is on the server, because you can control who can print. Device settings, here's where you can choose trays. What is it? Are we going to use legal paper, 8x11, things of that nature? Notice this does support duplexing. The driver recognizes it, and we're ready to go. On a server, what's so nice is you can look at your drivers and make sure they're up to date. So with a printer manager like this, we can take a look at all of our drivers, look at their versions, and make sure that all of our drivers for all of our printers are current and where they should be. I'm now back on my HP. I'm going to go to properties. We can update the driver, so we can go sharing. Let's go to advanced. We can go to new driver, and we can walk through the wizard, and we can always take and go to Windows Update. I'm going to hit that button. Notice it's going up to the internet. It's going up to Microsoft's update servers, and it may find a more up-to-date driver. Okay, this took quite a while. It went to the internet, went to Microsoft's update servers, downloads all secure signed drivers. We're going to drill down here to HP, see if we can find a much more up-to-date. It's an HP 400. We'll just scroll through. I know you're excited about scrolling through. A lot of times you can like here's a family of DeskJet. This is a DeskJet 1000C, 1120C, and 25. Many times you can use a family driver that will work for any of them. So that's always an option if you're really pressed for drivers. We're going to get up here to laser. Now, as I scrolled through, I really didn't find the driver that I was looking for, so I kind of gave up. So we're going to go ahead and stick with, notice, it embedded in the Windows 2012 operating system. They did have a driver, and so we're going to use that one, LaserJet 400 MFP PCL6, and we're just going to leave that. But you could, a lot of printers, you can just go to the internet, update. Here is where you would go to the sharing tab in the HP 400 properties on the server. And here's where if you had a printer that had 32-bit and 64-bit drivers, you could go in and add additional bit version drivers and other types of drivers for that printer. So this is where you would go. In this one, this is a universal driver. It's going to support 32 and 64, no problem. So here we are on step 3, connecting the clients for printing. The client, Joe, Billy, Bob, Susie, are going to connect to your server and the printer share, and they will always print that way. That gives us total control on our printing. So here we are. We have done it all. We have connected our server to the printer, set up the right drivers, security, share name. Then we went to Billy, Joe, Alice, Suzanne, and connected them to our server. That is server-based printing. If you can't do that, that's ABCs of IT work. You're going to be in serious trouble. So practice this and get good at it. What's our final thought on this lab? Remember, the key thing is getting the right drivers for your server. It is very important you take your time, you think about what you're doing, you read. If you have to do a little bit of investigation, do it. You do not want to put the wrong driver on the server. You can crash an entire printer server. That happened to me a few years ago, and we had to actually restore from backups an entire printer server. So it is wise to practice this. Don't get in a hurry. Get the right driver, think about it, and you will be very successful setting up printers on servers. A final note on the printer, it's best for you to browse to the web interface of that printer and make sure you add a password to this interface so that users who understand these basics won't go into your printers and change things and mess up your printers. So it's good for you to go in and set up a password on all your printers, make it consistent so you can get into them, and you